The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the HighLowSports podcast. We appreciate you all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if you're catching us on one of your favorite places to listen to podcasts later in the week. It is always fun to sit down and talk sports with you all. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And you know what, Kelcey? We had a good Thanksgiving week. We both got a chance to sit back, enjoy some festivities, enjoy some food, enjoy some not competitive football, unfortunately. And now it's right back on the grind. That week after the holiday is always a little bit more tiresome.
Yeah, it's been, kind of wild. I shouldn't say wild week. It's been a pretty boring week, honestly, in the last couple days of NFL football. Unfortunately, it hasn't been that way for college football. Far from it. Lots of tears shed this weekend by myself and probably many other fans of other teams out there. I know Ohio probably shed a few tears as well. It's the holiday weekend, it's rivalry week. We just finished that up, and we all know how that goes. There's a winner, there's a loser, and unfortunately, there's heartbreak nonstop.
Absolutely. There's always people there's tears of joy, there's tears of pain, there's people wanting to get fired, there's people getting $100 million extensions sometimes as well. So rivalry week can make and break a lot for a lot of these schools.
Yeah, hey. There's new head coaching signings, by the way, as well in college football. So surprises in there. But yeah, we don't talk about the guys that make $100,000 or $100 million extensions either. They don't count.
They'll be fine. But you talk about new coaches getting hired, where there's also some that have gotten fired recently. And I think that's a good segue here into our first segment. And our first segment, known as the tip off, is of course brought to you by our good friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BellaSports to get $20 off your first order. Get yourself some tickets to one of your favorite sporting events or concerts or anything along those lines. Remember code BellaSports for $20 off. And we'll go and rip the Band-Aid off. Frank Reich out in Carolina less than not even 12, 10 months since he was hired, something like that. Not even getting a full calendar year. Second coach to be fired this year with Josh McDaniels getting the first axe, but Frank Reich unfortunately takes over in Carolina and doesn't even get a full year to do everything. So my first reaction is, why? What good's coming out of this? Because not only are you losing your head coach, you fired your quarterbacks coach and Josh McCown, your running backs coach and Deuce Staley. You pretty much gutted them after 11 weeks, 12 weeks. Okay, what are you going to learn from these 5 weeks without him? You can't just let him finish the season and somewhat right the ship, see what can happen. I mean, now you're just it reeked of desperation, it reeked of impatience, and it reeked of I'm playing Madden and throwing a temper tantrum, basically. That's what it feels like. It was a very obviously, Frank, things weren't working too well, but I mean, you had no skill positions for Bryce Young. Your number one overall pick that you traded everything for is 5'10" and 190 pounds. It's going to take a minute to integrate like that at a different pace. You have a shaky offensive line at best. I might be being generous, call it shaky, honestly. I might be being polite at this point. And injured and okay defense that has its moments. Good players, but overall not that great all time. And honestly, Frank, as a head coach, his play calling's gone a little stale. It's kind of plateaued the last few years. But that was the fourth thing that I listed there as a problem with him. And now you're just paying it. Now you're going to pay him $20 million while you're paying another coach. You're doing something the Raiders would do when you fire Gruden and you fire McDaniels. You're going to be paying more. You're going to be paying so much money to people to be away from the team. So I feel like this was the wrong decision. It just reeks of why. That's the only way I could think of it at this point. It just reeks of why.
Yeah, I mean, what did they expect? Let's be completely fair. At the end of the day, you came into this season knowing full you just had the number one overall pick. Sure, you did trade to get it.
You were at 9, so it's not like you were a world beater in the first place.
Yeah, you were still a top 10 pick, so it's not shocking me. The report comes out that you were not even taking the quarterback that you wanted to take, that your offensive coaches wanted you to take, and then you're complaining about your offense. And then you fire said coaches despite them trying to work with actually not just trying, successfully working with the young quarterback who you drafted number one overall despite their misgivings. And honestly, they were in a lot of these games, and yet you're acting like you were supposed to be in the Super Bowl. If this performance came from the Eagles, 100% understand the firing. Get it done. Get it over with. This came from a team that was a top 10 pick last year who barely missed the playoffs because of the fluky NFC South. honestly, any other division, they're eliminated from playoff contention by week 7. And then this year, it's like, oh, we're in games, we're competitive, we bring in Adam Thielen, we're trying to provide a system for our young quarterback to grow in, and then we're just gonna fire our coach because we're pissed off. It doesn't make sense. It baffles the mind, and I'm tired of seeing all these scapegoat coaches come in and out of the league. We saw it in Houston, we saw it in Arizona, we saw it in insert city here, Tampa Bay. I mean, you name it. There's been a stopgap coach almost every time. It's like almost like, oh, we don't know really who we want to have as our coach for this new guy, so we'll just take you because you're just here. But we're gonna give you 3 years, but we're gonna fire you after 1. Like it feels like unless Frank Reich took them to the Super Bowl, he was gonna get fired. Like this is just, you don't fire a guy that's been competitive in their, yeah, you have 10 losses, but who's been competitive in 8 of the 10 losses. You just fire a guy for that. Yeah, he's not, your rookie quarterback is not performing as well as CJ Stroud. So be it. That also comes from the fact your offensive line is full of holes. Your defensive line has been injured most of the season. Like you name it, there's been an injury on that defensive line. Your young secondary has been off and on the field. Your linebacking core still needs to get a little better, but the pieces that are good there have been good all season. I mean, your receiving core, you have Adam Thielen. That's what you have this season. It's I don't know. This is just a franchise in Carolina who just always seems to get in their way, just continues to get in their way, is what this feels like.
When your number one receiver is a 30-something-year-old guy who's never known for being athletic necessarily, and there's a reason he was available, that's not going to work. You can't really scheme him open like that as well, too. You can't. Your rookie receiver, Jonathan Mingo, has flashes, but
yeah,
there's still some
work.
When
he gets plays called for him and he understands the offense, it's been great. I mean, let's be honest. What Mingo's been able to provide in his short stints because they don't trust him on the field because he wasn't learning the offense according to coaching staffs.
You paid Miles Sanders all that money for him to be kind of a running back by committee guy, and you don't really even use him in the passing game as well. You can't block for him as well anyway. Him and Chuba Hubbard. Chuba's been the more explosive one so far. You don't really have a tight end. I mean, they're okay, but you don't have a safety blanket for Bryce Young. You don't have anyone to take the top off you. There's just a lot missing there. It's not, if you put CJ Stroud there, he's not lighting the world on fire either.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the important part of this, right? You take CJ Stroud, you flip him with Bryce Young. You maybe don't have the same success in Houston.
85% of it, I'd say.
But yeah, I was gonna say you're not in the playoff hunt right now if you're Houston. But at the same time, you have 4 wins, 5 wins probably. Whereas you put CJ in Carolina, you maybe have 2 wins at this point in time. Maybe you win one of these close games at the end of the game.
Maybe 3 is a peak, maybe, but even that's just pulling out of a hat.
The one thing that always comes into play here is as much as coaches, I imagine, hate to hear this commentary because they hate making excuses. Injuries do play a part in the way your season goes, especially injuries to your offensive line, defensive line, which is your stall. That is your bread and butter is your defensive line if you're Carolina. And when you don't have guys like Derek Brown out there every single game, it hurts.
Brian Burns too.
Yeah, Brian Burns being injured. I mean, weren't they also victim to another Achilles this year as well? Is maybe not, but it just feels like it, at this point in time, it's somebody. But yeah, no, it's just, and then Terrace Marshall, the guy who's supposed to be able to take the top off, hasn't
quite panned out.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that one. That one's just kind of unfortunate the way that situation's worked out. He's good in flashes. You mentioned Mingo, good in flashes, just doesn't get much. And we got to talk about Miles Sanders here. I said this when he went to Carolina. I thought he got overpaid. I said this in all his heydays, and if you can even call it heydays in Philadelphia. I mean, he is a slightly above average NFL running back, which is nothing wrong with that. Let's be very clear. There is nothing wrong with being an average NFL running back. But if we're being fair, you're the reason why Kenneth Gainwell carried the ball 30+% of the time in Philadelphia. Why he had 30% of the snaps going into the playoffs last year. Why Kenneth Gainwell on a clutch drive for Philadelphia in the Super Bowl is on the field and not Miles Sanders. I mean, we're talking about a guy who missed wide open gaps in a Super Bowl game. I mean, gaps I could have walked through and gained 10 yards. I mean, that's just saying something. So, yeah, I mean, Miles Sanders, look, anybody expected the world beater that he was being paid to be like? I'm sorry, you were there's some misgivings there. But look, he's a good running back in as you mentioned in a platoon. But yeah, Chuba Hubbard is that was the dude. So
and neither one of them's gonna be that great when you can't really pass block, when you can't block for them either. Like when there's nowhere to run, like good luck. It's like have fun. It's whoever catches the ball a little bit better in space, and that's Chuba at this point. So it's like there's
and
not
you don't have to worry about anybody taking the top off. So there's 8, 9 in the box. So
every
you
single
can
time.
man up on the outside.
Bryce Young can elude a little bit, but he's not Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson. He's not like that. He's not going to break you with his legs. He's going to annoy you with his legs and extend plays. That's kind of what he does. He's not. And even if he does get running, once you get close to him, he's going to have to slide. You can't let him be taking hits at this point. Like he's not built for that. As much as we both talked about, like we're not as concerned about his size. We were under the impression that they would be able to get people open and have an offense under that. When it comes to moving and getting out of the pocket, that sort of thing, that's when it comes into play. So it's an absolute mess.
Here's the thing. You give him Tua's offense where that 2.4 second release time.
He'll throw darts.
Yeah. I mean, I think you see a Bryce Young that's lighting the league up right now. You put him in an offense that requires time for things to get open, that doesn't have an offensive line. I'm going to repeat that does not have an offensive line. You're asking for just tragedy because look, from a corner standpoint, all you got to do is guard them 10 yards basically. And then then you don't have to worry because after 10 yards, your defensive line is already getting to the quarterback.
It's the exact same offense Frank Reich brought to Indy when he started in 2018 that he ran with Andrew Luck and all of them. It's the exact same. The difference is you don't have Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers back there, or even to another extent when you have Carson Wentz and Jonathan Taylor breaking records. And you don't have the same O-line or the weapons. It's the exact same play calling, the exact same. Nothing has really changed and teams have cut onto that. So I get it in that perspective where he was flawed, but like you fire him after 11 games, wait till the end of the season and just give him the axe at that point. At this point, you're proving nothing and you're making it even harder for Bryce Young. You're taking a knife to his confidence at this point.
This is the Alex Smith situation. This is what we're about to watch. We're about to watch Alex Smith 2.0. And I hate that for Bryce Young because Bryce Young does have the ability to be a more game-changing player. Alex Smith was a game-changing player in his own right, if people know that you know. But he never could take his team to the Super Bowl type of deal. He was always the bridesmaid, if you will, never the bride. So most of that comes down to the fact he had 7 offensive coordinators in his first 10 years in the league,
something like that. Like it just nothing could stick really.
Yeah. His most consistent time was when he was in Kansas City.
That to the point he's a Pro Bowl quarterback multiple times. So it shows. And on top of this too, if you're a head coaching candidate, like look at the Ben Johnsons of the world, those ones that you want, like him. If Bieniemy for some reason is not made the head coach in Washington, he's out there, and some of those other higher end offensive minded type of coordinators you'll probably want to pair with Bryce Young. Why would you want to go to Carolina? Like, I mean, obviously it's one of 32. So if someone offers it, no one else does, someone will take it. Obviously they'll take it happily. But if you have your choice of the litter, like the guys that Carolina wants, like Ben Johnson, they reportedly wanted last year before Ben Johnson decided to stay. Good luck getting that. They're going to look at this and be like, nah, I'm good. It was the same thing with Houston. They were fortunate that D'Amico Ryans wanted to go back home, for lack of a better words. And they were able to, their offensive coordinator's name eludes me. I can't remember, but he's been a diamond in the rough. Him and CJ Stroud just clicked. They did not predict that. And so good luck Carolina mimicking that. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to try and find a diamond in the rough coach or find somebody, it's going to be tough. They're not going to be able to necessarily pull one of those top tier available coaches, I'd imagine. So we'll see what they can do. Obviously someone's going to take the job. They're going to take it happily. It's one of 32. But they might not quite get what they're looking for to pair with Bryce Young. They might have to surprise some people like we saw with Sean McVay's and Matt LaFleur's. It's like, oh, okay. Then they suddenly kind of work out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is a kind of a important thing to note. It is still 1 of 32 at the end of the day. While we're seriously harping on their ownership and they need to fix things, at the end of the day, the ownership has the leeway to continue doing things the way they're doing because guess what? You have a limited amount of jobs opening. So out of the 32 teams, you have 7 openings. Of those 7 openings, one might not be ideal, but you know what? Money and legacy talks. If every coach has the ego to want to be like, I want to go to this place and be the one that makes that change. Like every single, I feel like to be a coach, that has to be your at the end of the day, you want to be able to put your stamp on any team. You believe you could put your stamp on any team if given the opportunity and given the right tools. The problem is it's just like, yeah, you take it, but can you actually be given the right tools, not just promised the right tools?
Which means you're going to need to find someone who believes in Bryce Young, like Mike McDaniel was with Tua when they hired him. That was a big sticking point. He's like, I got Tua. I got this figured out. Don't you worry. You let me have Tua. You got to find someone who looks at Bryce Young the exact same way, which I'm sure there are out there, but we know during that draft process, he was a weirdly polarizing figure because of his stature, basically.
Give me the OC job. I'll take the OC job and I'll coach up Bryce.
Good. You'll have to hopefully you can find a receiver diamond in the rough because you're not getting one in the first round.
I'll stick with that. Me and Adam Thielen's 40 will be just fine for the first little bit, and then I'll take some second round draft picks and we'll be fine.
I don't think they have a second round pick this year.
Do they not? I thought they had the second and third.
Maybe they'll the second is not the second next year. But either way, it's gonna be some slim pickings either way. I hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you can't miss. Let's be honest, if you're Carolina going into this draft, and I think that's part of this coming up conversation with Carolina, what they do, not just in coaching staff, but in the draft, like you can't miss.
Those second and third round picks have to be starters, basically. They can't be rotational. They got to start for you pretty quickly.
Truthfully, you got to do what the Jets did in their draft. Like, as much as the Jets right now are like, oh, you're looking at that like, oh man, they're so like that team if healthy, probably a playoff team.
What they've done those previous drafts were, granted, they had multiple first round picks, but even some of their second rounders are pretty good too. Like you got to find a way. You got to hit on some of the late rounders.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But we're gonna transition a little bit out of firing, and now we're gonna go to the hospital bed here a little bit as well. Jonathan Taylor once again out of commission after having a strong performance against the Bucs and bouncing back. Now it looks like he's getting a thumb surgery and is going to be out 2 to 4 weeks. It looks like so. His season is all but effectively over at this point as well for the Colts, and that kind of stinks for him. You just paid him, you brought him back, he got his sea legs back under him, for lack of better words. And unfortunately, a weird injury that he didn't even know he had really necessarily at first. He was still playing in the second half all throughout with this, scored a touchdown with it. And now he's off to get surgery on that. And if you're the Colts, though, you just turn to the 10th leading rusher in the NFL on 20th. It was 20th in carries and Zach Moss. So, I mean, you lose some, but you're not falling off as bad as some of the other teams. So it could be worse for the Colts in the playoff hunt, but you lose your most explosive player by far.
Yeah, this is almost an embarrassment of riches. And I say that almost jestingly, like jokingly, but honestly, like you can't really complain if you're the Colts because JT, while he's been under the thumb of the management, under the thumb of his agent, finally did make that comeback. Finally did get things going again. Zach Moss, let's be honest, this entire season he has carried the bell. Absolutely been fantastic running the ball for this team, and you said top 10 right now in rushing yards. So tough to be like, oh, that's so sad that you lost JT when you still have Zach Moss out here dominating. And fantasy owners out there are like, okay, cool. So now I don't have anybody taking carries away from Zach Moss from me. Great. I can now take JT and put him back on the bench where I wanted him to go, and I can bring back my other running back.
Unless someone had JT and not Zach Moss, then they're pissed.
Yeah.
Or if they're like me and they were hoarding Zach Moss for some stupid reason, they're like, oh, wow, this worked.
Yeah, exactly. If you're in my work league, my boss has Zach Moss, and he's ecstatic to hear this news, not because JT's injured, but because now he doesn't have to worry about carrying the extra space because he had JT in his flex and then Zach Moss in the starting running back position. So that way he got both carries. But anyways, I digress. But no, this does suck for JT. There's no doubt about it. And we're kind of starting to see, the conversation we obviously in the offseason was how durable are running backs? Are they worth paying? This, that, and the other. I don't think this changes my thoughts. I still think that running backs are a huge value to a team. And I do believe that you should still pay them. Do you pay them the price of a number 1 wide receiver? No. Do you pay them a price of a number 2 wide receiver? Yeah, that's acceptable.
If they're like 24, like what JT was coming up for the contract, then yes.
A non-George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelcey tight end? Sure, absolutely. But, that's maybe I put them in the same category as corners. They have a short shelf life at the end of the day. You very rarely see one go longer than 6 years at the top of their game. Very rarely. I mean, right now you have Derrick Henry, 7, 8 years now, 9 years, top of the game. But he's a rare circumstance. He's built like a freak. He's a transformer. It's fantastic. But you know what? Not everybody's like him.
Some of us are human, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't change that conversation. But yeah, it does still suck for JT. I do want to see him come back healthy next year with a full offseason and full practice. Because you actually finally got to see this offensive line for the Colts actually back to the level they were when JT was setting rushing records. So, I want to see this again next year where you have a fully healthy offensive line, you have a fully healthy JT, full offseason with JT and Zach Moss. And I want to see what kind of creative things this team can come up with offensively. Because if you have Zach Moss playing like this and JT, we already know he can catch the ball. Put him as a slot, put him in a secondary slot or whatever you want to call it, then H back for goodness sake. Put Zach Moss as an up back. I don't care. Do something. Put him in the backfield at the same time and see what happens. Because you can
Not
have
to
a whole lot
mention,
of fun. So
they will have to re-sign Zach Moss, so we'll have to see if maybe someone should probably look to pay him if they need a running back. I think he's proven it. But if Indy does bring him back, you have that dimension plus a healthy Anthony Richardson. You won't have Gardner Minshew running into sacks with a clean pocket. Like you won't have him getting scared at that there's nobody near him, running backwards and trying to run forwards and making just goofy plays. Like you'll have a little more stability back there at quarterback next year, assuming Anthony comes back healthy too. So, like you said, the fact that they're in the playoff. Good.
Triple option: Anthony Richardson, Zach Moss, and JT.
I swear, I think they were thinking about pulling that out because they got everybody healthy back for like that one half before AR went down. I swear, I know Shane Steichen had that in the arsenal.
That made Calvin Johnson a first-round draft pick and made Demaryius Thomas a first-round draft pick.
I think he had some. I think that was cooking in the back pocket. I would be surprised if Shane didn't have that in the back pocket. We just never got a chance to see it. Hell, we've seen Gardner Minshew running like 4 touchdowns since he took over. So it's
also,
good.
That we're talking about the Colts, and I'm wearing my Cowboys jersey shirt that looks like the Colts logo. Anyway, sorry, I just had to point that out.
Yeah, you know what? It's fun. We could talk. We could talk about your Cowboys too.
No, I don't want to talk about it. I just looked down and noticed that I have a horse on my shirt.
You know what? That's all good too, because you know what? It fits. And your Cowboys looking awfully good, and the Colts find themselves in the playoff spot as well too. But against all odds, somehow they're sitting at the 7th seed. We'll see if it continues. But like you mentioned, they will be fun next year if everyone can come back healthy and continue building off of what they had this year as well. Like you said before in our preseason predictions, they're going to surprise some people, not the way it was drawn up, but they sure definitely did some surprising.
Yeah, I will say, like, based off my prediction, I didn't think it was going to be Zach Moss carrying the bell. I definitely thought JT was going to come back and run rickshaw over people. But I can't lie and say I'm unhappy with the way it turned out. Because Zach Moss, I've loved watching Zach Moss run since he was at Utah. I mean, absolutely powerful bowling ball, kind of Jerome Bettis-esque in a lot of the ways. Except for he's a lot faster. I mean,
a lot smaller, but still.
A lot smaller too. But as far as like current backs go, he kind of reminds me of that build.
And weirdly enough, too, it's also an indictment on the Bills. It's like you had this sitting in your room and you still couldn't run the damn ball. Like you still can't run with anyone but Josh Allen. And we see him, Devin Singletary.
Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's doing his best.
Well, James Cook is. Dalvin Cook's struggling.
Sorry, James, my bad.
He's trying. I'm saying, like in general, the last 3 years, you have Devin Singletary and Zach Moss in there, and your running backs get like 4 yards a game. Now look what they do elsewhere. I
see a number 4 with the name Cook on the back. I immediately think Dalvin. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You know, I'm sure Dalvin wishes he's
been ingrained in watching greatness for that many years.
Spoil as it is, but also we also didn't expect to see Gardner Minshew this much either, and then to have this kind of record. But I digress. We can go into that another time. But we got one more thing to look at. We're going to take a look at the hardwood. We're going to go to the NBA in-season tournament, and you know what? It's finally getting down to the nitty-gritty. It's been interesting. I'll say the courts could be uglier. They could be much.
I don't think they could be uglier. Let's be honest.
They could be much less ugly. Is what we're getting at. Like they're pretty heinous, but we're kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. We're going to take a look now at the knockout stage here. Here's where we are looking at starting early next week, I believe, as well. Lakers taking on the Suns, Kings taking on the Pelicans, the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Knicks, and the Pacers taking on the Celtics. So, first round matchups. What are you looking at, Kelcey? Which ones are standing out to you? What are you expecting to see here?
Well, obviously, the surprise of this one, I think it's safe to say, of all the teams in here on the West side, I think it's safe to say the Pelicans. Shocking for most people. However, I did predict them to have a good season in our preseason predictions, which does also entail the in-season tournament. I didn't think they'd be one of the 4 knockout teams, but yeah, I look at that matchup and it's very interesting, just because they're 2 very different styles of teams. You have Sacramento and the high-powered three-point shooting team, and then you have New Orleans, who's like grinded out Zion, Brandon Ingram. You know, occasionally they'll drop a 3 on you, but for the most part, they're just taking it right at you. And trying to just, use their size to dominate. And they do it well. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup for me. Whereas, you have LeBron versus KD on the other side of that West matchup. So that'll be intriguing if they play. So that's interesting. The Bucks Knicks one, I don't know really how I feel about that. I feel like the Bucks are going to kind of wipe the floor with the Knicks in this one. But the Knicks have been proven, they do win things that don't matter.
They are frisky.
Do what?
They are frisky.
They are frisky. They are very frisky. And then on the others, in the other matchup there in the East, the Pacers versus the Celtics. I actually really like this matchup because I really want to see what Tyrese Halliburton does matching up against somebody like JT or Jaylen Brown. because I feel like you're not going to have Drew Holiday matched up with Tyrese. You're going to have probably JT matched up with him. And I think that changes a lot of the floor, down court matchups, up and down the court, how they end up matching up and in the flow of the game. So this going to be very interesting. But don't be surprised if you see the Pacers, win that one versus the Celtics. So
I will say, looking at these 8 teams, the only ones that really, if you'd have told me beforehand that would surprise me, I'd be surprised that the Knicks got in there over some of the other teams and the Pelicans, like we mentioned already as well. But what I want to see are the team that last year neither one of us had doing anything, the Kings, taking on the team this year that we both was going to be the surprise in the Pacers in that championship, because defense will be incredibly optional. It'll have the fun built-in storyline of Tyrese Halliburton versus Domantas Sabonis in that trade battle royale. The offense is going to be absolutely ridiculous. If you look at Tyrese's numbers, he's like 25 and 12 on 50, 40, 90. Absolutely incredible. De'Aaron Fox is still outstanding too. Sabonis and him have a good rapport. It's not like the Kings got fleeced in that trade by any means whatsoever. No. Like it's a very balanced Justin Jefferson for Stephon Diggs looking trade almost at this point. So that's the matchup I want to see, because I'm going to be exhausted just watching it. I'm going to say lack of defense, because that implies they're not trying. It's the fact that these teams just have so good offensively and they are so bad defensively. It's not that they don't try; they just don't. They just can't. So that's the matchup.
Why bother with defense when I could put all my effort into offense and score at a 85% clip?
Like, you can't stop me. Why should I use effort trying to stop you? I'll just wait till you miss, and then I'll go make my shot. Like, they've mastered that to a T. This is Mike D'Antoni's wet dream if those two match up in the championship, and I am all for it, because I think this in-season tournament's been neat. It hasn't really, I don't know if it solved the issues the NBA was trying to do with it. The courts were absolutely heinous in some cases. I know what they were trying to do with, like, the City Connect uniforms, all that. It was cool, I guess, but like, it just didn't work out. But the idea is fun, and I think it at least adds a little bit of intrigue ending the year in the NBA too. At least adds a little bit of fun to it, a little bit of competitiveness. I don't know how much it's working with the players. I know early on it felt like that way with Steph, Luke, and them talking about it during, but I don't know. At least there's an idea. At least they're trying, because other than that, it's short in the season. But I don't think anybody really wants to do that either, because that's a lot of money you're leaving on the table too.
Yeah, exactly. No, I do think, as far as competitiveness goes in this, it's been very interesting. You see the teams that really lost game one, they didn't really seem to try as hard after that. So you saw guys, the 12th, well, I don't say 12th, but maybe 10th, 11th, 12th man on the bench, plus their two-way player, usually coming up and using, getting playing time. Much needed playing time at the NBA level as well. So you did see a few names on the scorecard that you're like, wait, who's this guy? But yeah, I do like it from the standpoint of not just competitiveness, but like also getting guys an opportunity. And yeah, it doesn't, at the end of the season, does it mean anything? No, but it's $1 million bonus. So it does mean something to a lot of guys on these rosters that aren't the top 3 players. Especially
when you're looking at teams like the Lakers and the Kings who play in California with those taxes too, like getting that little extra boost, it'll be real nice on top of it.
And then look at a team like the Pacers, who half their team are still on, early contracts. Exactly. And most of their salaries, yearly salaries are maybe $5 million. And so you telling me they can get a fifth of their yearly salary from winning it 3 more games? Oh, you better believe they're going to try hard.
Toss that in with like the rest of the Suns players outside that big 3 that are just kind of filling spots at this point. Same with the Bucks too, outside the main culprits, and the Celtics too. Like, a lot of those other players are looking at like, give me my 6 minutes. I am gonna get that bonus myself. Like, even if the superstar players, if they hypothetically weren't trying as hard, those other guys that are seeing that $1 million just extra million just dropped in, they're like, get out of my way. You know what? You don't want to try hard. You go sit down. I will take this. Like, you take the night off. We're getting this bonus.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, there's one thing that I'll always say about the NBA is it is a season of streaks, and it is a season of getting hot and season of confidence. If you win this tournament, doesn't mean anything. Again, not really. No, you get a weird trophy and you get $1 million. Cool. But does it mean something come playoff time? 100%. That confidence that you beat every other team already in the season, oh man, that's unstoppable. That's a different level of ability at the end of the day. Confidence is one of these, in very few sports does confidence like greatly impact. You could say baseball, and then right behind that basketball, as far as like the number one thing that confidence can impact. Because just even down to free throw shooting, even down to dribbling, if you're not confident in a dribble move, you're not going to pull it off fast anybody. Could you believe somebody who's not confident trying to pull off a Sham God? That's not going to happen.
Somebody
Like,
not confident trying to pull off a contested three as the clock winds down. Like, yeah,
so confidence is a big key to this. And while some people are bemoaning this entire idea, I like it from the standpoint, like I said, I like to see players getting playing time, but I also like to see kids getting confidence early on. You can grow a team's confidence. You can also destroy confidence. Imagine the Lakers get blown out by the Suns right now. Suns match up with the Lakers in the playoffs. That Laker team is not going to be happy. Like, obviously they have LeBron, so it's a different conversation maybe, but it's still going to be tough for them for the rest of that team to overcome the fact that maybe you just got ramrodded by the Suns in the play-in tournament or in the in-season tournament.
absolutely. It's a very interesting idea as well too. And I wouldn't mind if they could find a way to make it affect seeding, home court, or something like that later on. That'd be great. I don't know how they do it, but at least it's a start. At least they're trying something. I mean, I don't know. They're trying something. The only other thing I could think of is shorten the playoff series to like 3 games, 5 games, then 7 games for the finals. That way, you're more concerned about where you get seeded. If you play the Nuggets in round 1, you don't have 7 games to try and figure it out. You lose game 1, you better figure it out real quick like that. Maybe a little bit of flashback to what it used to be.
Make it win percentage based and include it in your regular season standings.
Here's boss. Find a way to do it. I don't know what it is. I don't get paid to figure it out. And if they want to start paying me to figure it out, I'll figure something out. But it's not my jurisdiction now. But it's a start. I don't mind, and I look forward to seeing this in-season tournament final 8 play out as well. But that's gonna do it here for the tip-off. And you know what, Kelcey? I feel like the in-season tournament has kind of woke up the NBA a little bit as well too. It's kind of given a little bit of spark as well. And you know what? You have a little bit of something for those who are having trouble staying awake.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can catch on to the fact that I can literally ramble on right now consistently. And a lot of that comes down to a recent partner of ours. We were reached out to by Magic Mind to help me out. I struggle with daytime sleepiness, drowsiness during work. I mean, straight up just falling asleep in the middle of my chair type of thing in the middle of the office. Not a good idea, by the way. Been searching for a lot of remedies. You can only drink so much caffeine before you kind of you get the shakes, you get, everything just starts to happen wrong, is the best way I could put it. And the good thing is Magic Mind, they reached out. They allowed me to try out their product. It's a green drink here. It's absolutely fantastic. It has been a huge benefit to me. It goes along with my morning routine. So I have a V8 energy drink. And I take this little single shot of Magic Mind. It's a little bottle you see here. It's fantastic. It just goes along with whatever your morning routine is, whether you drink coffee, energy drinks, anything, soda, water. Just goes along right there with it. It provides lasting energy. So 7 hours of steady energy. For me, I'm getting about 9 to 10 hours of it. I'm going from 6 a.m. to now we're going on almost 9 p.m. by the time this podcast will end, and I'll have enough energy to get through the day without yawning finally. Reduces stress, focus mental clarity as well. Look, it's fantastic. It's got ingredients in there like lion's mane mushrooms, matcha, B vitamins, and ashwagandha, and L-theanine and turmeric for stress management. So it covers all the gambit of things that I've struggled with, whether it's sleepiness, stress, focus, energy throughout the day. It's been absolutely fantastic. Cool thing about Magic Mind, has a full-time money-back guarantee. All you have to do is go check out Magic Mind's website. And while you're over there, head on over, type in the code HighLow20 for 56% off of a subscription order. Or if you already have the subscription ordered, you get another 20% off. So it's not too bad. It's been absolutely fantastic since I've tried it. I was a little hesitant at first. If you guys go back 3 weeks now, my first review was, I don't know if it really helped me focus. I sat down and knocked out a 6-hour project in 3 hours because I was not getting distracted. I was able to focus. I was able to get everything done and do it right. And that was the important thing. There was no redos, none of that as well. No questions about it. So yeah, like I said, head on over to magicmind.com/HighLow20 and type in the code HighLow20 for 56% off of your subscription, or 20% off if you already have a subscription for the next 10 days. But yeah, you'll be hearing a lot more about Magic Mind as we continue our partnership with them. Absolutely fantastic. We greatly appreciate them reaching out to us. I don't think we thank them for our Thanksgiving stuff as in my appreciation, but I have been greatly appreciative of Magic Mind right now because seriously, it's been fantastic getting me through all these long days. So cannot wait to continue my journey with them. So yeah, it's been great so far, and don't worry, we'll keep you guys updated going forward.
Absolutely. You know what? Magic Mind our main event is presented by Magic Mind. Once again, use code HighLow for HighLow20 for 50% off your subscription order, as Kelcey mentioned as well too. And this main event's gonna be a little bit magical depending on who you talk to as well too. We're gonna take a look at college football, and we're gonna start with rivalry week just wrapped up as well too. Quite the quite the recap, I guess we could say.
Something. It was quite something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite something. We'll go and start Oregon State. Honestly, not as competitive as I thought it would be. Oregon kind of ran rud shop through them. Expected them to win, but didn't expect them to, for lack of better terms, dominate. Like, it really wasn't competitive ball. We talked about if it was in Oregon State, you might even be picking the upset for the Oregon State. But since it was in Eugene, it was going to take Oregon, but a little close. But Oregon didn't even give a chance to breathe. They pretty much suffocated them right out of the gate. Bo Nix, he didn't stamp his Heisman Trophy, but he stamped a trip to New York, I'd say.
Oh yeah, 100%. I said that, I said this in the lead up. I think he's already in New York, but I think this game for sure solidified it. To the point where maybe I'm even reconsidering my Heisman Trophy pick. I don't think I am actually, but and we'll get to that one here in a moment. But no, I think right now you look at it. I mentioned it. Corvallis is a tough place to play if it was in Corvallis, but because it's in Eugene, Autzen Stadium. There's an old saying in Autzen Stadium: you go over the river and through the woods to Autzen Stadium. We go. It is literally like that to get to the stadium from the main campus for Oregon, and it echoes unbelievably loud. One of two stadiums that is built to handle the echoes in college football that way and reverberate. It has called the Autzen Bounce. Super fantastic. So, by the way, I just need to repeat this, how cool that is, that they built this with that in mind, and it came into play. Oregon was absolutely dominant. The amount of, I'm going to say they were just miscommunications from Oregon State, whether it be blocking or finding your gap or anything like that, offensively and defensively. It was insane. That game was about as non-competitive as it possibly gets. It felt like an Oklahoma State type of matchup when Oklahoma was at its top. Like, that's what it felt like. Like, it was like, oh, this is a rivalry. Great. But no, it was tough. I feel bad for DJU, but Oregon State had a good year. They did what they could. But yeah, Oregon was, and you got to say, this team has gotten a lot better since that loss to Washington early on in the season.
Absolutely. They've looked, minus that game, they've looked pretty much unbeatable, it feels like. And even that game, they lost late. So we'll definitely keep that matchup's going to be fun. We'll talk a little bit later. But you mentioned Washington. We'll go ahead and jump to the Apple Cup now. Washington versus Washington State. Interesting rivalry, to say at least, that Washington has kind of dominated for the most part, but it's always been fun games. And once again, winning by the skin of their teeth. Washington undefeated, but they don't. It's definitely getting difficult down the stretch, as you can see too. Like, they've had some weirdly close games. The defense, as you could tell, doesn't really stop anybody, but they're in the right place at the right time down the stretch, it feels like. Offensively, they're as good as it gets. We already knew that, but defensively, they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's when they deal with Oregon in that Pac-12 championship. The last couple of weeks, the performances they had, they definitely can't do that again. So defensively, they got to find a way to tighten that up a little bit. But a win is a win, and here they go to the conference championship.
Yeah, they don't ask how pretty, they just ask how many, right? Unfortunately for Michael Penix, it was a rough night. 18 of 33, his worst game by far as a Husky, it feels like, at least since early last year. And yeah, it just wasn't great. But when it mattered, when it was game time, 65-yard drive to seal the game. He absolutely fantastic down the stretch. That 42-yard field goal was money, as money as it gets. And you saw the emotion on Michael Penix's. Well, you didn't see the emotion if you were watching it on TV, but you could witness the emotion of his body language with him stuck his head in the TV or in the phone stand and everything during all that. That's what college football is all about. So you enjoy that moment, especially Apple Cup rivalry. That rivalry, we've talked about it before on the show. It's one of our favorite rivalries, one of the most underrated rivalries, I think, in college football, because you never know. That's literally the one you just always throw out the record for. You just never know what's going to happen. Wild things happen, whether it's in Pullman or whether it's in Seattle. So, but it was a good showing, back and forth. I'll have a little bit more to talk about Cam Ward here later on in the show. But you talk about a kid who's ready to play. He's got a lot to say going forward in the next season. But right now, Michael Penix and Washington got to figure out something to do with Oregon, with Bo Nix in Oregon. But it'll be fun. It'll be a fun game nonetheless.
Absolutely. And Oregon's their defense may be better, but they got their hands filled as well too. That game feels like whoever makes the first mistake or whoever makes the last mistake, it's gonna be the win, depending on how it goes. But that should be one heck of a matchup. But we're gonna now go to the game, also known as Ohio State versus Michigan, and we're competitive, kind of like we expected, a good Big Ten game throughout. But Ohio State, just for lack of better terms, they didn't have that dog in them. It felt like they just got Kyle McCord's not bad, but he's not CJ Stroud. He can't mask a lot of the mistakes that we've seen the last couple of years, or Justin Fields. Marvin Harrison's Marvin Harrison. We already know that, but they lack that killer instinct. And my biggest issue is that very, very complacentness to go for the field goal at the end of the half. That freakishly long field goal too. It's like you were hired to not beat Jim Tressel. Like you were hired to be a little bit more aggressive and almost psychotic sometimes in these decisions. But in the big games, that has not been the case with Ryan Day. I'm not one to call for firings. When you've won 50 of 56 games or something like that, I'm not gonna say you need to get fired, but like something's got to change here. Like some of these situations in the big games that he makes. If he does get fired, I get it, but I'm not running around with a pitchfork asking for him to get fired. But that was my biggest concern: is what you are known for, what you are hired for, you have struggled with, and you haven't been it. It feels like CJ Stroud masked a lot of those issues that we saw along with that receiving core. This defense was finally good again for the first time in a few years. And then offensively, you stagnate because you get super conservative. Like they had 9 run calls on the first drive or something like that. Great, establish the run. That's great. But you have a Maserati and a Ferrari and a Lamborghini at receiver. You got to find ways to utilize them, be aggressive. And I don't know. And you have a really good tight end. Cade Stover is really good. He's
underratedly good.
He's
Cade Stover should be in the conversation for national tight end of the year.
Like he should be in the conversation for runner-up to Brock Bowers for national tight end of the year.
Yeah.
Like he needs to be in that conversation for sure. It doesn't make sense. And I don't know. Good for Michigan. Like we kind of talked about, they should be number 2 now. Whoever wins this game should be number 2. We already talked about it. Neither one needed to be 2 or 3 or 1 to start with, but it just felt like Ohio State lacked that dog in them. That's the only way I can describe it. But good competitive Big Ten game otherwise.
No, I think that's an accurate assumption. It's funny. Obviously, being in Ohio, I talk about this with Ohio State fans, and thankfully there are a few relatively normal Ohio State fans, very similar to how I am about the Cowboys, very realistic.
I would say you're more on the pessimistic side as opposed
to maybe even slightly pessimistic. But and we're having a conversation about quarterback here for Ohio State, and the big thing that came into mind was the fact that since Troy Smith, Ohio State has not suffered a bad college quarterback at any point in time since then.
Weirdly enough, the worst one might have been Cardell Jones, who you won a national championship.
Right. Who came in as a savior and got you a national championship.
Granted, all he had to do was hand it to Zeke and occasionally run people over at the goal line. But yes, same point. Like your worst one is the one you won a natty with, arguably.
And then you get here and you're like, oh, this kid's the guy. No. And again, I will say this. My biggest issue with Ryan Day is that he has 17 play calls to come out of 7 formations. That's it. How many times did we see 21 personnel set up in a 3 stack to one side, 0 on the other? None. We never saw it. How many times did we see 2 on the left, 1 on the right? That was every fucking play. No, excuse my French. But literally every play was Ohio State running out of a 2 left, 1 right with a tight end on the right.
Mid-2000s to a T is basically what the offense is.
And we all know you're running to the right. You're obviously your best offensive lineman are your right guard and your right tackle. They're all world right now. Of course, you're going to run that way. Like, we all see it. Michigan knows it. I don't even need the hand signals to call that defense. Like, I will stack 11 on that side of the ball, and I will leave the left side open, and I guarantee you still won't beat me. Like, it's rough to watch because he's one of those coaches that is so reliant on his system working that he doesn't know what to do when his system comes off course. And the biggest example of that goes back to Justin Fields 2 years in the playoffs, running the same play, one losing the game, one winning a national title.
Well, not the national, but
but to get to the national title game.
Mm-hmm.
That was the difference. Like, he loses the national title on one because it's just the way it is. You win it on the other because it worked. And it's
million day, on top of it.
Yeah. But like, we all knew that play was coming. Michigan knows that play is coming. They didn't even need their best corner to beat Ohio State. And it still feels like, I mean, I don't think he's coming back, so I can say this, but it still felt like, even with Marvin Harrison involved and targeted almost 18 times, I feels like it still didn't feel like enough. It still feels like you could just continuously throw this guy the ball and you get Brandon Marshall type 21 catches type of numbers.
It felt like they tried to use him as a decoy at a lot of spots. Then they finally get him going. The offense started moving too, and I think it almost felt like he didn't. I want to clarify too. I don't think Kyle McCord is bad, but he's clearly not CJ Stroud.
I don't think he's not bad. He's just not developed yet.
Exactly. He's a guy that will probably take time. And honestly, let's not forget they wanted to bench CJ Stroud a couple of years ago after that Oregon game. Everyone wanted him out, and they're like Quinn Ewers, and then CJ Stroud will look at him now. So Kyle McCord is nowhere near that level. He obviously has a lot of
You
talent.
now too.
Exactly. So I think I don't know. That was just it was a big 10 game to a T, but the number one and number two defenses in the country is not like we were expecting much. I just didn't expect I don't know. Ryan today's got to change something. Like he's Jeff Fisher at this point is what it feels like, but with incredible players. Like he's Jeff Fisher, but with a buttload of first round picks.
I didn't even make that comparison, but yeah, that's a good one.
Just
I would also add
I
in,
can't
like,
think of how else to describe it.
on the flip side of this whole thing with Ohio State messing up, Michigan did their job. Came out there, played great defense. Their offensive line dominated. Even when their center went down, they still dominated.
Actually got better. Weirdly enough, they like rallied around that.
Yeah, shout out Blake Corum for the literal play after seeing his number one All-Pro center go away on the cart to take it to the house off of a cutback in an open space in a lane, and the dude just takes it back to the house and then just shout out his offensive lineman afterwards. I talked about this many times. For Michigan, there's talks about JJ being the Heisman Trophy guy for that team. No, it is Blake Corum, it is Donovan Edwards, and it is that offensive line. If you're going to give it to anybody, that's to the guys that get the trophy on this Michigan team. Those are the dogs. Those are the guys getting the job done. And shout out the secondary for Michigan as well. Absolutely locking down almost everybody. I mean, you did what you could against Marvin Harrison. Let's not kid ourselves. Marvin Harrison is a freak.
Stop that, man. You just hope he doesn't kill you.
You just hope you can keep the Maserati under 80. That's all it is. Like, no, I'm not saying 80 yards. I mean 80 miles per hour. Like, you try not to let him hit that 100 mark. You hit that triple digits, it's over. But you did a good job with that, and that's the biggest thing. And Michigan did their job, and now they get Harbaugh back for a conference championship game against Iowa. So
which we presume they should probably win in another ugly game. But the funny part when you look at this Michigan team is they're the San Francisco 49ers of the early 2010s when Jim was there. He's literally created that exact same team, but college football style. It's absolutely hilarious. And I'm just going to piggyback off what you said with JJ McCarthy. A lot of people have him like as if he comes out this year as mock QB3, a guy that's going to go early first round. We're going to wait till draft season to evaluate that, but I don't see it yet. He's a fine prospect, but like let's reel it in. Like you mentioned, this team is carried by Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and that mauling offensive line. So it's real back to those J.J. McCarthy first-round pick things for a little while. At least finish the season before we look into that.
J.J. McCarthy, third-round draft pick at the highest.
I would just say at least second round because he's big, strong arm, athletic kid. Like he's a tratesy kid. People overdraft him for that reason.
He's Jonathan. He's Dorian Thompson-Robinson 2.0.
He's a little bigger than DTR, but I know what you're getting at as well too. Like
throwing the ball, he's DTR.
That's fair. I'm just saying, like they'll looking back, I can make that guy. Like they'll be like, I can hold that. But either way, that's going to lead us to the last conference championship game. Alabama versus Auburn, the Iron Bowl, the one that DJ called correctly of Auburn, that Alabama will win, but Auburn will cover, as painful as it was. Fourth and forever. Kelcey, you know what? This isn't even my job to talk. You know what? This feels like a Kelcey moment. So I'm just gonna let you take. I'm gonna let you take the reins at this point.
Yeah, this one hurt, man. Okay, so first of all, let me just be very clear. Let's have a come to Jesus moment for all Auburn fans. There was not a single person to blame for that game. The better team at the end of the night won. However, we can all say that the referees sucked. And when I say we, I do mean both Auburn and Alabama fans can easily say that. It's not the first time in the Iron Bowl that we've had missed calls and blown calls and just awful officiating. Because there was just awful officiating. Say what you will about the last play. Say what you will about the muff punt. Freakish things happen in Jordan-Hare Stadium, especially during the Iron Bowl. We all know this. We were all there for kick six. We were all there for the prayer at Jordan-Hare. We're all there for Bo over the top. Just add this one into large laundry list of things. This one just happened to be negative for Auburn. The rain game versus West Virginia, if you guys remember back that long, Steve Slayton for West Virginia. There are 1,001 type of things that have happened in that stadium that just are freakish. And, everybody that needs to have a conversation about this, that wants to blame somebody, stop. You blame yourself. Because if you're that upset about this team who turned over its entire team, literally lost 26 players last year and had to fill in through the portal and through recruiting the last minute from Hugh Freeze, is a bowl-eligible team who just took a top 10 team to the brink of death, to a 4th and 31, ended up losing. Sure. But it was a 4th and 31 play in an Alabama-Auburn game. You know something crazy is going to happen. And that's what the game is decided on. Every Auburn fan should be ecstatic right now. And I don't mean like, oh, like don't imagine like the loss hurt. Yeah, absolutely, it hurts. But every Auburn fan needs to focus on the fact that looking forward, Hugh Freeze has this team playing out of its mind. There's no reason Auburn and its current talent level should be keeping up with Alabama, despite all their down season talk. There's no reason that conversation should ever be had. I believe that Auburn, it was a woeful belief. Let me be very honest. I was very much reaching, pulling this one out of a dark hole to try to like root for Auburn and pretend that I believe they have a chance. But at the end of the day, every Auburn fan has that naivety to them. And, it's tough, but it's like, yeah, I just need to have that conversation with Auburn fans. We need to look at the light at the end of the tunnel here. Yes, we're going to be playing in the Liberty Bowl or whatever it is, Magnolia Bowl in Birmingham. That's fine. You know what? I'm okay with being able to play in that bowl this year, maybe the Belk Bowl. I don't know which one it is this year. Because you know what? Bowl time, baby. It's bowl eligible season. Like, I don't care that it's a 6-win season because there shouldn't have been 6 wins for this team. They didn't have a quarterback until week 10. Like, come on, man. Understand this game was a fantastic game. It does hurt. There's no question about that. But if you're truly a fan of the game, if you're truly a fan of Auburn, you're truly a fan of this rivalry, what it could be, you understand that this is just setting up for a long next 4 years or however long both Saban and Hugh Freeze line up. Because, by the way, this is only Hugh Freeze's second loss. He is 2-2 against an Alabama-coached Nick Saban coached Alabama in his career. Just think about that. He is just shy of joining only Gus Malzahn to beat the man 3 times. You got to imagine he's going to keep getting a chance. He at least gets 2 more chances, I believe, out of this one. So while this game sucked, while the 4th and forever is going to live it down in infamy, shout out Jalen Milroe for overcoming. Literally, this is the moment he overcomes everything that he had to deal with this season. So congratulations to him, because the kid doesn't deserve to be treated the way he was been treated by that offensive coordinator and by that team and by those fans. There's a spot for you in Auburn if you ever want to transfer. And you know what? I don't even know who the kid is that caught the ball, but congratulations to him for doing the one thing that you're never supposed to do in a 4th and long situation, and that's get behind the secondary. So, yeah, I digress now.
It's all good. You know what? That was reasonable, and you managed to do it without falling apart. So, you know what? That'll work, but that's kind of a fair way to put it. And I did see, I wish I could find it again. I wish I could find the picture of the account, but somebody bet like $1,000 on Auburn to win money line beforehand. They cashed out during that timeout before the 4th down. Like they were keeping it. Then during that timeout, they're like, "No, I'm getting out of here," and got like 98% of the winnings. So they got like $9,000 or something like that. Ridiculous.
Oh no, that's not even the biggest one. The biggest one I saw is a dude bet $500 on Auburn to win and pulled back $93K.
Which is just kudos to those people who thought to do that. Kudos to them for thinking it through.
Maybe I'm just too much of a diehard. I was like, no, I'm riding till the end of the day. I can't pull money out. Yeah, I'll put $1 on the game, so I wasn't too worried.
That hurts a little bit less if it works out. But
yeah,
Alabama's prize for winning this game is they now get to face Georgia for the SEC championship game, and that's going to segue us into the conference championship game previews here. And we're going to cruise through these. We're not going to take too much time. We'll pick the winners, and we'll go ahead and pick a sentence. So we kind of mentioned it there. Georgia, Alabama, SEC. How are we feeling, Kelcey? Does Jalen Milroe get it done, or Georgia could fight something?
Georgia, I'm sorry. It's going to take a lot to beat Georgia. Georgia is my victor here.
I think Georgia's not as good as the last couple of years, but they're more than good enough to win this game still. And I think there's only 2 teams in the country that could beat them, and one of them is not necessarily Alabama right now. So I agree with you. I think Georgia's going to take this one as well. Next, we'll go ahead and move over to the Big 12. On paper, less competitive looking one, as we got Texas taking on number 18th ranked Oklahoma State. I'll go ahead and just go first. I think Texas doesn't roll like they should, but they'll find a way to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think Texas wins, but I will say Oklahoma State covers that 21-point spread right now.
Is it 21 right now? They'll cover that. Texas will win by like 10 is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, last I checked, I think it was 21. It might have dropped down to 17, but yeah, it was still, it's almost 3 touchdown difference. And look, if you haven't seen Oklahoma State play, they grind you out on the ground. So there's not going to be enough time to score 3 extra touchdowns after getting a lead. So yeah, I don't see it. I say Texas wins, but Oklahoma State covers the spread there.
You mentioned grinding down. That's a good way to go into the Big Ten championship games. We have Michigan taking on Iowa, a surprise Iowa team, which is winning the only way Iowa knows how to do, with having a Heisman Trophy candidate worthy punter and a really, really good defense at this point too. And they find themselves in the championship game against Michigan, but that's probably where it ends. This has like 21-6 written all over it, unfortunately. I think Michigan's going to take care of it.
I think it's a 32-point over under on this one. You might still have to hit the under on this. I was talking to my buddy before the cast, and he was able to buy down to 27 points for the over. And I was like, okay, that's maybe the only way I feel comfortable with an over is at 27 points here, because 21, 23 of those, 24 of those are going to come from Michigan. And you got to imagine they can get set. Iowa can cover you with 7. But yeah, no, if Cade McNamara had not torn his knee earlier this season, this is a completely different conversation, because there's a rivalry battle with the quarterbacks there. And we all talk about players with vengeance. They're not somebody you want to mess with usually. So unfortunately, this is not the case. I do think Iowa does play well, though. This is Brian Ferentz's last hurrah, if you will, with Iowa and after the bowl game. So yeah, I think Michigan wins, but yeah, I think it's going to be a grind.
Exactly. It ain't going to be pretty, that's for sure. It ain't going to be pretty, or it's going to be real ugly for Iowa. I think if it's their best hope is that it's hideous for everybody. But next up, we're going to go to the ACC championship as we have Florida State taking on Louisville. Louisville coming off a surprise loss takes a little bit of the fun out of this one as well. But nonetheless, ACC championship game on the line. Florida State without Jordan Travis. I'm still going to take Florida State. I still think they find a way to grind out an ugly win in this one. I don't like it as much, but I think I'm going to take Florida State, but that's because I don't really like either one of these teams right now after Louisville's loss last week.
Funny enough, Florida State was my preseason. This is actually my preseason prediction for this championship game. And I'm actually shocked that it panned out this way. But yeah, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with Florida State. They're my preseason prediction. I had Jordan Travis potentially as a Heisman Trophy finalist. Obviously, up until the injury, you probably could say he was. Unfortunately, now you're down to your backup quarterback, and he did what he had to do last week. It wasn't pretty, wasn't great, but you know what? It got the job done, and now you're in a championship game. See if your defense can carry you the rest of the way there. Unfortunately, I do think no matter what, once they get through this game, if they're in the playoff, that's going to be a very short end of the conversation. But I think for now, I'm going to say Florida State wins this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to take us now to the big one, the one we've had been waiting for right now. Oregon taking on Washington, 3 versus 5, undefeated versus the best one-loss team I think we could say at this point in the country. It should be winner gets it no matter what, but obviously with college football playoff committee, you can never trust them completely. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one. Bo Nix versus Michael Penix, arguably 2 of the 3 Heisman Trophy frontrunners, 2 of the 3 best teams all year long, rematching in Allegiant Stadium. Though for all the marbles and some, Washington, Oregon, riding with your boy Bo Nix, or does Penix do it times 2?
They're going to have to go with what I said earlier this season, and that is that the winner of the triplex of Oregon, Washington, USC regular season wins the Pac-12, and that's also my Heisman Trophy winner. So, who is that? That is Washington. I do think Washington's going to pull this one off. It's going to be close, but I'm just going to say Michael Penix pulls this one off on a very, very close one.
Everything is telling me to pick Oregon, but I just can't seem to do it. It feels like this is Washington's time to get to the playoff. All things are pointing against them. So, but I'm still going to take Washington. It might be a little bit more heart over head in this case, but everything on paper to me feels like Oregon, but I can't do it if that makes sense. So I'm going to take Washington. I'm not touching this game betting wise. I'm not taking the over. I'm not taking the under. I'm not taking the money lines. I'm not taking any spreads. I'm not taking yards. Because this could really very weirdly end up being a defensive game. Weirdly enough as it could be, like Washington's defense could randomly step up to the task, and we know Oregon's got some dogs there. And it could be a 50-50 game like it was almost the first time. Like it can go either way. I'm going to take Washington by the skin of my teeth, and I think that's the way to guarantee a Pac-12 team makes the playoff. Because if you have a one-loss Oregon Pac-12 champion, I don't doubt that they will try and find a way to force in Alabama, even with 2 losses, or Texas with 1 loss and Florida State. Like they will find a way to keep Oregon out of it, I believe, if they are the Pac-12 champions with 1 loss.
That's possible. I will say this, and this again, and go back to the conversation. We were talking about betting earlier for these championship games. Me and my buddy were, and he did make a really good point about Oregon, top 15 defense in the nation. So, I mean, that's what kind of equals this out. But my God, the offense for Washington is set up to handle any defense because they run the most unguardable routes. I'm sorry, but 10-yard outs from a slot, an inside slot, or from even the outside man in a high-low set, it's almost impossible to guard it, especially with how well Michael Penix throws that pass. It's on the sideline every time. It's darn near it's like watching, at the end of the game, you always talk about trying to run a play to get out of bounds, and you have the entire defense lined up on the sideline. Unless the defense lines up that way, it's almost like you can't stop this route setup. And you add into that the way that
as soon as you shade outside, Roma Dunze's running a post for 60.
Oh, yeah, it's 100% an out and up. Like and say what you will, but Roma Dunze, man, that dude is
first round pick.
Scary. I mean, Debo-esque in a lot of ways.
Maybe even faster and a little bit less menacing, but yeah, like so versatile. Just get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, just see what happens. I mean, his clutch first down on that 4th down play last week was just the quintessential, like, oh, he's that dude. Mind you, this is after catching a 60-yard touchdown earlier, like 2 drives earlier.
And on top of that, they can run the ball pretty well, too, when they need to. Like we saw against USC, they're like, all right, this shootout's probably not in our best interest. Let's run the ball. Oh, wait, we're running it for 15 yards a clip. We might as well be passing it.
And I'll say one more. Just talking about running the ball, don't forget Michael Penix can run the ball. He doesn't do it because he likes his life, but
he looks burdened every time he does it. Like how we talk about Lamar looks like it's a burden to throw the ball. Like, oh, fine, I'll do it. Penix is the same way with running. Like, oh, fine, I'll take the 10 yards, but I don't like it.
But you know what? The dude rattles off 20, 30 yards every time he does it. So just saying, when it comes down to it, and this is the big thing, and this is my bias against Bo Nix, and it is what it is. Yes, he's a Heisman Trophy finalist, potential Heisman winner, probably finishes second in the Heisman Trophy. Just don't trust him to hold on to the ball. Period. Point blank. End of story. I've seen him throw far too many picks in crunch time. I've seen him turn the ball over far too many times. It scares me. I just can't put money on Bo Nix ever.
What's really funny about this game, looking at it as well, too, is both of those teams, those are the senior citizen quarterbacks in college football, arguably, as well, too. Like, they've been around for a minute. They've for different reasons, obviously, too, transfers as well as injuries and the situation in Auburn with Bo Nix leaving as well, too. Like, they both have 4 or 5 years of starting experience on top of everything. And
yes, Kevin, and yes, Bo Nix is an absentee father, evidently.
That being said, I'll just say I think it's an incredible quarterback matchup too that we really see in the Pac-12 more than that we've seen the Pac-12 historically. I think it's a good one to wrap out the Pac-12 as a whole as well too. It's a great matchup, but I can't pick Oregon even though everything points to, like you mentioned, top 15 defense. They feel like the Cowboys of college football. They kill those teams they're supposed to. Where Washington kind of survives them. Like when they play those teams they're supposed to win, Washington just kind of wins. Where Oregon kills them. But then you see, like, when they played Washington, how close it was, too. So I'm going to
leave that comment alone. I'm sorry, Kev. I'm not putting that one on the screen. That one can stay there.
I'm not going to comment either. I'm going to say I'm sticking with Washington, but I don't like it. And like you said, we are not touching that one. No bets will be placed on that game whatsoever.
By the way, shout out, Kev, for being an understanding Alabama fan. I appreciate that.
Absolutely as well, too. That group chat was a very, very cordial discourse between Auburn and Alabama as well. Very, very cordial.
We can all agree SEC referees suck.
Amen. And CBS broadcast for SEC games too.
Oh God, I can't. It's funny. One capper off of the Iron Bowl conversation. The Iron Bowl will no longer be held on CBS anymore. Thank goodness that contract is over. Please do not renew that. Auburn, Alabama, do not renew that at all. Please let it go to ESPN. I'm so tired of seeing this game ruined. And maybe, just maybe, it can finally go back to being a Black Friday game and the pinnacle of college football weekend.
The pinnacle includes getting Gary out of here. Auburn and Alabama fans hate Gary. That's all you need to know.
Everybody hates Gary.
Exactly. It is united against Gary is what we've come to at this point.
Thank goodness it was just Gary left. It wasn't both of them.
I mean, honestly, I'm sure if we polled a Georgia fan, they'd agree with us too. Like it is a full overall conglomerate. It's basically like the rebellion against the empire at this point. But that's going to do it here for the main event, which is, we talked about betting. So let's go ahead and jump right into Crunch Time, of course, brought to you by our good friends over at Outlier. Use outlier.bet /HighLowSports. Get a free 7-day trial. Bet smarter, not harder. Get all you need from odds, trends, and everything along those lines. And Kelcey, you got a little bit of something to get off your chest here for Crunch Time, if I'm not mistaken. There's a little bit of something that you want to let out.
All right, so we talk about the NIL being the wild, wild west, right? Rumors have come out that Cam Ward has over 13 teams now offering over $1 million in NIL deals to transfer.
By the way, that's the Washington State quarterback for those.
Yeah, Washington State's Cam Ward, the guy who is 4th right now in passing yards in the NCAA. Fantastic season. Fantastic player. No doubt about it. Are we starting to see the point in which the NIL is making players undraftable? And what I mean is you look at Caleb Williams now. He's asking rumors or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is that it came out that there is a potential conversation about having an ownership percentage of whatever team drafts him.
And throw on top of that, his dad came out and basically said, hey, if he doesn't like the team picking number 1, he'll go back to school.
Exactly. So Cam Ward is now unfortunately under the spotlight for this one because he is the next quarterback. I think next year, going into next year, right now, far too early predictions. Your Heisman Trophy candidate, number 1 Heisman Trophy candidate going in next year.
Him and Shadur, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah, him and Shadur. But I think you probably give the nod right now to Cam Ward just because of Shadur's, just because people hate Colorado, honestly. But look,
4 games compared to 7, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Cam Ward is taking the heat for this, and it's not his fault. This kid is just a kid. He's a college guy trying to make a living in the game that we would all love to make a living playing. Let's be honest, the money that's being flashed around for football right now, it's insane. But on the flip side of this, congratulations, Cam Ward. You are now the face of what the NIL can do for a player. For all these high school kids, for all these middle school kids who are trying to fight to get out of whatever they're at, they look at Cam Ward. This kid is getting offered $1 million to transfer somewhere next year. And these kids are looking at it like $1 million could change my family. Like, realistically. And let's be honest, Cam Ward is not a top 4 team. He's not playing for a top 4 team in the Pac-12. He's playing for one of the 2 finalists in the Pac-12. But that's not because they're good. That's because they're the only 2 teams that didn't find another conference to be taken by. And it's not, he had some upsets, yes. But it's not like we're talking about a top 10 player right now. Arguments can be made top 25, maybe. But that's pushing it. We're talking about a guy who could potentially be good next year. No guarantees. We haven't seen him with a successful surrounding pieces to know what he can do. And now he's being offered over $1 million by several places, including Alabama, Auburn, you name it. They're on the list. It just makes you wonder, is this the best thing for college football, or is this potentially going down a path we don't want to go down? Personally, I like to want to weigh on the bright side of it, and I think this is a good thing for college football because you're providing an outlet to kids that may never see a football field in the future in the NFL, and they can make this money to change their lives for decades and years familially. But you know what? At the same time, I can see the downside to it that maybe we're making kids undraftable, and now we're going to lose the amateurship of college football. The thing that makes college football so great, we might be losing.
I would say you no longer have to make the league to change your life. You just kind of have to get one shot at college football and get this chance, like you mentioned. You don't have to get to the league, make the roster, make the team, get the starting role, and have a couple good years. Now you just have to have one good college year, and you can make that generational change. So, for better and for worse, we'll have to see how it plays out. But we'll see what happens with Cam Ward too. Maybe he chooses to stay. I highly doubt it, though. Unfortunately,
I'll welcome him at Auburn if he chooses it, though.
I'm sure Auburn would welcome him with open arms as well, too, as many would. But the nice part is that you can't transfer twice in a row. So I guess there's at least that going forward. So if someone does leave, they don't get to leave right back again as well. So We'll see how that goes. But that's going to do it here for the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all for joining us this weekend or this week. And if you have anything else you want to mention, go ahead and drop it on one of our social media pages. Go and check out Tier Tuesday on our YouTube channel as well, too. We appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all again next week.